It's the Paris Chong
You play video games?
Show.
Okay, so recently though, I'm not. They're not for good, but I
No.
recently sort of gave them up
Oh,
because
my son just is addicted. Oh,
they're good. I mean,
he loves
I
them.
love them, and
What do you play?
I play a lot of Call of Duty.
Okay.
I play a lot of NBA 2K.
He
But I
likes
mean,
Madden.
oh yeah, in my heyday, I was a big Madden
Uh-huh.
fan. But I was always into like first person shooters, and see, I don't, you have to be a certain age to remember when Mortal Kombat
I
first
never
came
wa
out,
I
and
don't
it was just
understand it,
like
but
well, that I remember. I want to say it was because of this game. It
yeah.
was because of Mortal Kombat that they had to start putting the rating
Yeah.
on games because the game was so violent. And I remember I was in Louisiana at the time. I would go to Louisiana every year
Mhm.
to stay with my grandparents and get my parents get a break, and they'd send me and my sister to be with my grandparents for the summer. And I remember seeing this game and just like begging my parents every time I talked to them, like, can I please get this when I get back? And I had to have been like maybe 10 or 11 at the time,
Mhm.
right? So it was really on the fence and
Yeah.
like if this game was going to be appropriate for me. And yeah, yeah, video games have always been a big thing. And in fact, my big stimulus for working on computers. My dad sort of used gaming as a carrot, and but I had been working on Photoshop around that
Yeah.
time as well. Like these really, it's definitely not like what Photoshop is now, but
Yeah.
I had been working on Photoshop, and there was a couple other like little programs. There was a 3D program called Bryce at the time, and the CAD programs, AutoCAD, and
Mhm.
things like that. So I'd always had this connection to software for
Yeah.
making images and imaging. And so now it's interesting now, after having an entire career in law enforcement, that somehow like full circle come back around
To
to
art.
working in.
So
Yeah.
do you think any of those video games kind of persuaded you to maybe be in law enforcement?
Maybe one of my big draws was I grew up in Richmond, California, and it was growing up there, especially in the '90s, was an insanely violent city,
Mhm.
and I sort of lived in this sort of this like suburb portion. Like it was part of the city, but it was in between the city and another
Yeah.
spot. And but all my family was scattered all throughout Richmond, and I still went to church
Yeah.
in the south side of Richmond, and had family in North Richmond, and I have family all over the place. And so even though I was off on this kind of on the outskirts right outside the city, everything that was still happening there still impacted me.
Right.
And we had our own issues because a lot of the guys I grew up with, they had come out there to stay and get in a better environment because they were, either in trouble or having issues in the area they were in Richmond. And yeah, it was just one of the it was a hard place. It was a really beautiful place. I'm working ideas for a project actually to sort of show
I love
that.
that.
It was a really beautiful place growing up, and it was also a really hard place growing up. And
Well, the Bay Area is like that. My whole family's in the Bay
yeah, yeah, I
Area,
know.
so
I can't
yeah.
wait for you to
I know.
come
I'm gonna
down.
see you more this year because I need to go see my family more this
Yeah.
year. Yeah, I'll be there. And so you were in law enforcement now.
Yeah, I wanted to help. I mean,
It
I
seems like a
just
really rough place to be in law enforcement.
it
Did
was.
you ever shoot anyone?
No, no, very thankful that I did not. I mean, I was in situations where that was an option,
Hmm.
but I was very thankful that it didn't lead to that. I never, I had all the training and all that, but I never, that was never my
Yeah,
interest. I wanted to be part of
but
the
you carried a
solution.
gun.
Yeah, so ultimately, I worked patrol for a couple of years, but ultimately I ended up in a special investigations group, and we, went all over the place. We dealt with gangs, narcotics, parole. It was sort of we had these like specialties, and I did that for years, and I really loved it. But it was interesting. I had
Yeah.
some conflicts with the ways in which the criminal justice system played out in this country. Some huge conflicts with that. And again, I wanted to just be something different. I wanted to be a solution.
Yeah.
I had really bad experiences with the police. Really bad experiences with the police growing up. I even had, some bad ones while, being a cop. The two times I'd almost been killed was other police not
Oh.
recognizing me as a cop
Oh
and almost
no.
killing me, right? And so it was a difficult situation, but I think I was young when I
Hmm.
went in and sort of thinking, okay, I can come in here and I can change this and change that, and you realize, the system can be very, very insulated.
Is that why you left?
I left because I crushed my hand,
Oh.
and that was the end of that. It was I couldn't do the job anymore. Um, because I was still very optimistic that at least my presence there was helpful, and it was crazy. Like so when I left, I would get calls from folks that had been in prison, who had been, were out and had been in the streets, gang members. That's like we're just random people that you wouldn't think you would hear from again. And they're like, hey, we really appreciated you while you were here. And we
Yeah.
always looked at you as like a part of this place, and you were just different. And it's like we appreciated you being here. And that, I have some really big mixed feelings with it. And one of my things was like, man, if I'm not here, it's just one less person who really wants to do good that's gonna it's gonna be gone,
Yeah.
and I felt like my city was gonna lose uh but I felt like were my strong suits when I was working that job, which was empathy and understanding and the ability to take care of business when needed. But that means so many different things at different times. And there are the parts of it that I loved was being there for the people,
Yeah.
and those are the folks that a lot of those folks they remember that. And when the police arrive, it's usually on the worst day of somebody's life, and
Mhm.
the interactions you have in those times will stick with you forever. And I saw really a lot of bad things, a lot of bad things. Um, but I also saw like some really beautiful things. And the city always was what I knew it was. Like I didn't have the same kind of hangups around gang members and drug dealers
Yeah.
and folks who were doing crime as maybe some other people, because I also grew up with folks who were like that, and I knew that they were regular people trying to figure out life like everybody else. And perhaps things that I could say or do, or the amount of respect that I could show them,
Mhm.
um, while also being like, all right, well, this is what we have to do now, but let's have a conversation. I think those things were the little gems I was trying to leave behind,
Right.
because
Sounds like you did.
I hope so. There are folks that are jaded and go like, you're wasting your breath. But I always thought, like, you never know when something you say might kick in for
Mhm.
somebody and impact their life in a really big way, or help them make a decision that they maybe wouldn't have made. And again, like being super optimistic, but that's what I felt like my job
Yeah.
was. Yeah, I came there and I had to carry a gun, and my job involved taking people to jail sometimes even taking family members to jail.
Uh,
But the reality was is that I think that I had gotten a lot of respect, where when I was from there, and two
yeah.
is like I treated everybody with respect.
It's the Paris Chong Show.